We've been reporting a lot about the rising costs of gas and groceries. And while those have been going up, stocks and cryptocurrencies have been going way down.
Yeah, to help break it all down for us, we're joined by author Layah Heilpern. Thanks for joining us. Talk about Bitcoin first. It's been branded as the hedge against inflation. At least that's the way it was initially marketed to people, the new gold. But inflation's, near 30, 40-year highs, and Bitcoin's tanking. What's going on?
Well, thanks for having me on. It's a great question because ultimately people do look at Bitcoin as that hedge against inflation. But I think it's really important to zoom out and look at the March 2020 crash. Bitcoin is up nearly over 400% since the March 2020 crash. So ultimately it is still that hedge against inflation. Like you said, 40-year highs. If people had invested in that point, they would be in a much better position right now. We also have to consider the fact that, you say it's tanking and it's crashing, but it's only crashing to the highs of the previous bull market. Nothing goes up forever. Market cycles do go in cycles, and of course, things do have to cool off. People right now don't have the surplus cash to put into alternative asset classes or investing in general, simply because of the cost of living crisis and because everything is so much more expensive right now. But long term, it is important to zoom out.
And Layah, a lot of people are struggling to pay for gas or groceries. Should they be thinking about investing, and why?
It really depends what your investment strategy is and how much money and how much surplus cash you have. I can't give you any financial advice, but I do think that Bitcoin is that hedge against inflation long term. We've already seen, like I said, up 400% since that March 2020 crash. If you do have surplus cash, then you should be looking to investing. You should be looking to find a form of hedge against inflation, whether it's gold, whether it's Bitcoin, whatever you're most comfortable with, because I don't think it looks like inflation is going to be calming down anytime soon.
Layah, the other issue with Bitcoin, initially it was sold as an item that would be limited in supply. A finite number of these coins could be made. And that also sounded really appealing to a lot of investors. But a lot of people, including myself, didn't realize that you could make an endless number of different coins. And has that diluted Bitcoin's value, I wonder?
Not really. You have Bitcoin and then you have many other different cryptocurrencies. Some cryptocurrencies like Dogecoin, for example, have an unlimited supply, but that's completely separate and completely different to Bitcoin. Bitcoin will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. No more can ever be created. And that's actually implemented in the math and the code. And that math and code is set in stone and it cannot be changed. So whatever the other cryptocurrencies are doing is irrelevant. It doesn't affect Bitcoin. All it does, unfortunately, is distract people. People want to make a lot of money pretty quickly. And so they might look to something like Dogecoin and say, oh, wow, this is pretty cheap. Maybe, I can make the same kind of gains. But unfortunately, that distracts them. It moves them away from what we would regard as sound money, something with a limited supply like Bitcoin. So no, it doesn't affect Bitcoin's value. It just distracts people, unfortunately.
And there are several reports that Black Americans have been impacted the hardest by this price crash. Is that true? And why is that?
I'm afraid I can't speak intelligently as to why Black people might be more affected by the crash as opposed to white people or Asian people.
And Layah, talk about, we talked about those other coins, but a lot of other companies too that are freezing accounts now, and that raises a lot of concern for people. They kind of blame all of the crypto market when it's maybe some of these, outside or these smaller coins. How does that affect confidence?
Yeah, unfortunately, it really does instill a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. But that's simply because they are using centralized exchanges. So it's a bit like leaving your money with the bank, which kind of goes against the ethos of Bitcoin in the first place. And so, yes, a lot of these companies, because of the market volatility right now, and there's a lot of selling pressure, are approaching their liquidation price and their withholding withdrawals. This is concerning, but it doesn't actually matter because the idea here, when it comes to Bitcoin, is that you take self-custody of the asset. This means not leaving it in the custody of a third party. You can buy it on an exchange, but then you want to withdraw it, take self-custody and hold it in a non-custodial manner, which literally means there's no third party. It's just you and your assets. You're fully sovereign. Nobody can freeze your funds. Nobody can confiscate them. It doesn't matter what happens with the market. It doesn't matter how much selling pressure there is, because ultimately you hold that money. And that's the education part, which I think is so important, because like you mentioned, yes, it does make people feel very concerned about Bitcoin, concerned about the market. But again, this is centralized exchanges. And also we see this with banks globally. We see this in Lebanon. We've seen it in Canada, where people's funds are frozen, where money is confiscated. So the best thing to do is to hold it in a non-custodial way. No third party, just you and your Bitcoin.
All right, so informative. Thank you so much, Layah, for joining us this morning. We appreciate you.